Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an amazing episode. I love my brother Joshua and everything he's got going on. And not only do I love him because of that, but he's also a Gamecock. So that's top notch in my book. Um, but guys, we're going to be talking about betting on yourself. No matter where you came from, like people know my story. I came in from, drug addicted household, ninth grade dropout, and I still, be able to have two number one best selling books, top rated podcasts, speaking all over the world because I bet on myself and I didn't let what somebody else said about me affect me. And we're going to go into Josh's story. He's got an amazing story. Joshua, welcome to the store, brother. I'm glad we finally get to hang out.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
I love it. So my first question is, because I do have a traumatic brain injury, if I don't ask the question, I'm going to forget it. What is your definition of resiliency?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking a little bit before we started filming, right? And my big thing. I'm 41 years old, so I'm kind of at the point of my life where I'd like to give back and pay it forward a little bit. I was fortunate enough to have some very key people in my life do that for me. But really terrible background. So, you talk about coming from a drug addicted household. My father died in prison, kind of had to learn how to figure out how to navigate life on my own and really fumble through a lot of early adulthood. Got super fortunate to meet some of the right people to help me along. But, my big thing as far as resiliency is it doesn't matter where you start, it's how you finish. I think that I was smart enough to see some people along the way that really cared about me, and really were able to invest some time and energy into me and kind of getting me to this point in life. But I think it doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish.
Okay, so now for me, like I said, my mother's clean out, gone over 27 years. Thank God. She got sober after I did. But, I grew up in an abusive and addicted household. And for me, my solace was books. I mean, from an earlier age, my mother was a nurse. So I would actually read books, nursing books. I actually read the encyclopedia when people actually had encyclopedias. So I read everything I can get. That was my solace. So going back to your childhood, going through what you went through, what was your solace? What was your coping mechanism?
Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. I don't know that anybody's asked me that, but I found I love hip hop music from a 41-year-old white guy, but crappy background. I think I just kind of, a lot of it makes sense to me. And I started listening to it when I was like 8. So yeah, I mean, I really found solace in the kind of the hip hop culture. And yeah, I mean, it's in terms of, coping mechanisms. I mean, I probably had a bunch of them throughout my life. I also read a ton at this point. I think what I've realized is that my mind is always working. I think I used dreams a lot to cope back then, right? Just how do I get out of this situation? How do I get out of it successfully and make something of my life? And now at this point, it's realizing that I've got to keep that busy mind, focused on some positive things. Otherwise things get a little interesting. So.
Now, one thing I think I can definitely agree with. I'm 54, so I'm a little bit older than you, but I grew up in the streets, and for me, like you see a 54-year-old white guy, and you're like, well, what is on his playlist? And I got Dre, NWA, Tupac, DMX, Notorious B.I.G. But I also got Five Finger Death Punch, Metallica. But a lot of people, they judge you by your color and your age, and they would think, wait, hip hop, really? But I think me, because I like hip hop because they talked about a lot of stuff that I can understand. I can understand being around the drugs and being around the alcoholism and the violence. So I think that's why I gravitated toward his hip hop. What about you?
Yeah, same. I mean, terrible. I would say lower middle class to upper lower class neighborhood. super isolated from neighbors, domestic violence of, abuse of all kinds, physical, sexual, not to mention, verbal and mental, but yeah, so just, all types of abuse. Kind of one of my lines in telling my backstory is the record for the number of times that the police came to the house in one day was 3. It happened to be the exact same 2 officers, coming for domestic violence at every time. And by the 3rd time, one of them said, if you guys don't figure this out, the next time we're taking one of you to jail. Because, every time they came out, of course, nobody would press charges, typical in domestic violence situations. So, yeah, it's, all types of abuse and not really having a whole lot of faith in the system, just having so much interaction with it as a child and not having anybody with any real authority trying to help extract you from that. So yeah, and you're really just kind of trying to get by day to day and figure out how to exit that situation.
Now, how did you do in grade school and high school? Because for me in grade school, now I know it. I have severe ADHD, which now I consider it my superpower because I can do everything and talk to everybody about everything. But back then, there was no such thing as ADHD. You were just dumb and you were put in special classes. But now I think we need to get the parents, if any parents are listening, that there's different modalities of teaching. Like some people are I'm a hands-on guy. Teach me hands-on, I'll do it. Give me a book to show me how to do it. I'll never be able to do it. So how did you do in grade school and then going into high school?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that's changed completely now as an adult. But grade school and high school, I crushed it. Like it wasn't very hard for me. I actually skipped a year in college. I tested out of so many hours. But yeah, I think it was a different mentality though, because now as an entrepreneur, I have this mentality of learning the things that I need. And that's not our educational system. Not to go down a rabbit hole on the education system, but it's the opposite of entrepreneurship, right? Failure's not encouraged. You've got to learn this specific curriculum that we've set for you, right? It's not necessarily either what you love or what you want to do, but you've got these core requirements that you've got to learn that may or may not have anything to do with reality and what you need in adulthood. So I think I made the best of it because I realized that getting good grades was my only way out to try to get a scholarship to go to college. That was not a possibility for me any other way. So I think that was enough to kind of keep me focused on getting good grades. If you sent me back to school now, I don't think that would be the same. I don't think that would be the case. There's too much practicality now for me to.
No, I was watching an episode of Patrick Bet Davis's podcast, and he was talking about everything going on with Chat GPT, and we had somebody else that was on. He was interviewing somebody, and he was saying college isn't more about what you learn; it's about how to learn. Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's really how we learn things, and for me, it's being with people like yourself. I just interviewed my friend Jerry Brazy. He went from the same kind of abuse that we went through. His company has done $450 million in business.
Wow!
So it's not, like you said, it's not where you come from. It's where you're headed. So I see you have a whole list of great colleges. I've seen Citadel. I've seen Carolina. So what was your first college? And what did you pick to go into?
Yes, I actually, so my big thing was trying to get a scholarship, like I said, coming out of high school. And so the thing that seemed the most obvious to me was trying to get some type of ROTC scholarship, Reserve Officer Training Corps scholarship. So my actual so I did get a Navy ROTC scholarship. My actual first school that I got that scholarship to was Virginia Tech. So I'm from Northern Virginia. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. And so that's, a lot of the, I'll say, B-level kids B-level, upper middle class kids went to the two Virginia Tech from my high school. So it was kind of like a safety school for anybody that had the grades. But yeah, I went to the Citadel instead because I felt like if I didn't have more structure than Virginia Tech, then I would fail out. So I actually transferred the scholarship from Virginia Tech to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. I actually wound up leaving there after a couple of years and transferred over to College of Charleston to finish my undergrad degree.
You seem like such a nice guy. I'm sure that you never had to walk any demerits off.
Oh yeah, not at all. No, yeah, that's not. Yeah, no, I wasn't asked to leave the Citadel at all. No, yeah, I totally. I mentioned I skipped a grade, so I tested out of a bunch of hours and then I overloaded every semester. So I actually skipped not my freshman year, but my junior year of college, and so I couldn't cope with it anymore, and so I was going to graduate at age 20, and I really so it was business administration was my degree. I kind of had no idea what I was supposed to do. I was 20 years old, coming from the environment that I came from. It was like, okay, I figured out how to get here. I'm close to getting this piece of paper. What does it mean? And now I have to be an adult. And I couldn't cope with it. And like a lot of people from chaotic backgrounds, I blew it up. I self-sabotaged, started doing some really stupid things. And I, and drinking a lot and doing drugs and stuff. I got arrested when I was 20, wound up being able to not have that completely destroy my life, fortunately. And because I was so far ahead, I look back, we all have those like 10 moments that are pivotal in your life, right? I look back and I was so far ahead that I actually was able to transfer as a senior to College of Charleston to be able to finish and get my bachelor's degree. So I actually didn't lose any time from that other than taking a year off of school. Interestingly enough, but definitely learned a lot, again, another interaction with the system that I didn't believe in. Right. So,
and you really didn't move that far of college because that's like what, minutes away from each other.
Walking distance for sure. Yeah. And the interesting thing, I mean, it kept me in Charleston. So I was in corporate America for 20 years after that. But yeah, I had many opportunities in corporate America to move back to the DC area, and I'm still in Charleston, South Carolina. So you see how that conversation went.
Oh, I love Charleston. We just went there on vacation because my mother lives in Murrells Inlet. So we go to Murrells Inlet every year. And I love Charleston. Just walking around Charleston is gorgeous. The food, the high-end food is great. I just love Charleston. I think it's such a beautiful area. So now talk to us. Well, first, before we get any further, I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I was with GNC for over 30 years. I was in the military for 23. So I love coffee. I love pre-workouts. But for me, they all tasted like ass. And they didn't give me the energy that I needed. Or if I drank a cup, 5 minutes later, I'm in the bathroom. So I came out with my own coffee called Vertical Momentum Coffee. Twice the energy, no crash. The best part is 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. So I don't make any money off of it, but I'm just trying to save lives. And also, since I started drinking more coffee, I was drinking more sugar, so I gained like 50 pounds. Now my friend has a company called Buzzy Bees Honey. He's actually a beekeeper, and I stopped using regular sugar. Now I'm using honey. I dropped about 11 pounds, and my blood sugar dropped about 180 points just by using honey instead of sugar. So, guys, if you love honey, that will actually go from the hive to your house. Write honey down below. So now talk to us a little bit about Josh, because school world and corporate world, two totally different animals. Just like I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they said getting a BA in business is BS.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that are teaching business have never owned a business. So Talk to us about going out into the real world and going out into corporate America from college.
Yeah, that's the old those who can do, those who can't teach cliche, I guess. Yeah, and that definitely I think was my experience. So, got the bachelor's in business administration, and I spent about a dozen of my 20 years in corporate America working for Fortune 500 companies. So, highly structured, lots of layers of bureaucracy. I supported the federal government, so mostly I worked for a defense contractor, so mostly Navy during my career, a little bit of Coast Guard and Army at the end, but yeah, lots of structure. I joke about the federal government, moving at the speed of government. So it's all one giant bureaucracy. It's basically the opposite of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is like, your hair's on fire, your desk is on fire, everything's on fire, try to make money. And so, a little bit different, probably suits my personality and background a little bit more. A lot of people that come from our backgrounds, tend to thrive with entrepreneurship just because chaos is normal to us.
Yeah.
If that's, you kind of have to hit a certain point in life where you stop that, right? To find some stability and figure out exactly why you're doing that. But the ability to succeed and keep your calm in chaos actually really fits entrepreneurship. So yeah, corporate America. Go ahead.
And I think entrepreneurs and veterans, first responders, we all have that in common. That especially if you come from our background, it's kind of like we thrive in chaos. Because, like for me, when I know like something happened with my mother a while ago and everybody else was going off the rails and everything just calmed down for me.
Right.
I was just like, all right, we got this. I got you. Don't worry about it. Yeah. And they're like, how could you be so calm? I'm like, don't worry. I got this. So talk to us a little bit about having that mindset, where, like you said, thriving in chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard I don't even remember who it was at this point. I'm at the age where I'll quote something and not remember who said it, right? But yeah, I heard a NFL quarterback at one point say like, okay, in year 3 and 4, the game just really slows down for you. And I think that's kind of the point that I'm at in life, right? Is like, you just see things so clearly. The vision for what I'm trying to accomplish is so clear. And then also that ability to see chaos and just not really be bothered by it. Right. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of that combination, I think is where I'm at in life. So it's been an interesting journey, but I'm glad I've gotten to the point where I can enjoy it a bit.
But I love that, and I agree, but I was in the military for over 23 years and we were taught that it's better to be a sniper than just to be praying and spraying. And I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, we pray and spray, we have shiny object syndrome and we don't really hit our goals because we're just all over the place. And then I wish I could, I'm like you, I read so many books, I forget, but somebody said that, focus, follow one course until successful. And, but I think new entrepreneurs go that shiny object syndrome. They're trying to do everything and not being good at anything instead of doing that one thing and become really good at that one thing. Like Bruce Lee said, I think I just read the quote yesterday. He said, I don't fear the man that's thrown 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that throws one kick 10,000 times.
Right.
So talk to us about focus on, how to focus on one thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm reading a book now called Buy Back Your Time. And it kind of talks a little bit about this in terms of entrepreneurship and, coming from chaos and being better at coping with it. But, you got to get past that blowing things up, the self-sabotage phase. He calls them hand grenades. The author does, So are you, when you have a new idea, is that a shiny thing or is it an actual good idea? Is it a hand grenade? That one of the team members, one of your employees is going to have to jump on because it's a stupid idea and probably is going to blow up. Or, is it an actual good idea? And so Yeah, I think especially when you're starting out, you have to be flexible in how to get to your goal, but steadfast in what your goal actually is, right? And so I think keep an eye on the prize, but business models change constantly. I mean, when venture capitalists invest in companies, they're investing in the team, right? Not necessarily the initial business idea, because that changes so frequently. So I think, yeah, with time, just having grown my business, I've got a property management company. We're also building a small hotel brand. We bought our first two boutique hotels last year. One of my partners is a home builder. We're finishing renovation of the first one. It actually reopens on Saturday in a couple days. The other partner has a marketing company, so he's kind of the brains behind the strategy and the marketing of the brand. But being able to kind of hone in on one or two things that you're really good at and that make you happy. That makes a world of difference. I saw a quote from Elon Musk at one point that there's three different things, right? You have to love it, you have to be good at it, and there has to be a market for it. And if those things don't overlap, then it doesn't really matter. You can love something and be really great at it, but if nobody wants to buy it, then does it really matter, right? And so I think it's that constant trying to find that trifecta as an entrepreneur. But to your point, yeah, you can't just fire the shotgun and hope you hit something. You've got to try the rifle, right? And if you miss the first time, that's fine. You can aim at something else, but you can't just fire at everything that comes your way.
And like my friend Dean Graziosi wrote in his book, The Miracle Mindset. The Millionaire Mindset. That a lot of us, including me, and this is something when I started out doing this, I would just post on social media all day until he said, "Bro, what's making you money? You're posting everywhere, but you don't have money coming in." He said, "So that's what you need to focus on. The first thing is what actually makes you money, and then you can do everything else after that." But I think a lot of people like myself, oh, maybe I'm going to do a TikTok, maybe I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. Yeah, you're getting views, but you're not paying your bills.
Right. Yeah. How do you monetize?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Getting eyeballs and making money from those eyeballs are two different things, right? And most people struggle with both, right? Even I'm just going to make this and go viral. That's actually a lot harder to do than you would think, right? I know we've all seen some stupid cat videos with 10 million views, but it's a lot harder to do than you would think. So again, you got to be strategic, right? There has to be a plan with how you build that following. And generally it's the overnight success 15 years in the making, right? Not the one person that goes viral and then tries to exploit that as much as possible, and then they drop off because they can't, they're a one-hit wonder. They can't duplicate that success. So
yeah, like we're 12. I just said in an earlier interview, we're a 12-year overnight success. We're finally in the top 1% of all podcasts in the world with over 700,000 downloads, but we're just getting started. And a lot of people that want to start a podcast, oh, I'm going to start a podcast and it's going to be fun and I'm going to make money. And then 12 episodes, they're out the door. They're like, I can't do this. It takes too much work.
Right.
So
right.
Talk to us about beginning entrepreneurship, coming from the corporate sector. What was that like? And what was your first deal?
Yeah, so going back to 2012, I actually was part of a corporate-wide layoff at one of those Fortune 500 companies. So 700 of my friends and I went through this layoff. Fortunately, because of the size of the layoff, certain federal rules applied. And so, they had to give everybody 8 weeks. I wound up getting a severance, but going through that whole experience, that was, I think, probably one of my, I talk about 10 pivot points, right? That was definitely one of them where you kind of come to a crossroads. And I had done well up to that point in my career. So 41, 11 years. So I was around 30, right? My goal, part of one of the issues was my big goal was like, oh, I want to be a director and make $100,000 a year by the time I hit 30. And I hit that goal at 29, and I was also a vice president in this Fortune 500 company. And so it's like, now what do I do, right? And almost kind of reverting back to that chaos, right? Like, okay, let's blow this up. And so going through the layoff just forced the mentality of, you don't really love this career, so what's the smartest way to exit it? That was not, to me at the time, it wasn't, let me just run to something else right now and give it a shot just because I got this severance. To me, it was, I've never had a safety net. That's not how I grew up. And so now that I finally have this tiny kernel of savings, of a backstop, let me get myself together. Let me go to another company, do something similar for a little bit and try and figure out what that looks like. And so coming out of that was the first time I actually listed a condo that I was living in on VRBO, long before the proliferation of Airbnb. And that was, I joke now 11 years later that my old college friends at the time would quite literally laugh at me, like, you're doing what? You're renting your home out to strangers? And now that we're doing this, this actual bed and breakfast or boutique hotel concept, now we're on the other end of that education spectrum. Like, oh, you mean Airbnb? No. Like, there was an actual bed and breakfast before you had the Airbnb. So we're back in this education mode. But yeah, I mean, that was my first. That kind of forced me into doing something different. Was able to kind of put away the initial money from all of that. I tried a few other things out along the way, but this is what stuck. And so I was fortunate enough, because I kept that corporate job, I didn't spend a penny of the money that I was making doing the hosting stuff on the side for years, for many, many years, until I sold a single family home in 2019 and bought a duplex that was built in 1905 that I renovated. And that was the very first time that I spent any of that money from the first, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years of doing hosting on anything. And I didn't spend it on myself. I reinvested it into what I was doing and did a renovation on this 100-year-old duplex.
All right. So because sometimes, somebody will get a little successful in business, when they first start out, they're probably driving an old beat up pickup truck because they got to go to Lowe's and pick up all that stuff. Then they start getting a little bit successful. Now they're driving a BMW. Now they're driving a high end car. But they're not reinvesting back into their business. And the most successful people that I know, and I know a lot of millionaires and billionaires, they're always investing back in their business. So talk to us about a little bit about that. Like you said, you weren't living high on the hog. You were actually reinvesting back into your business. And that's what actually helped. I'm sure you had some lean times, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, we made it through COVID, right? I mean, that was arguably the worst hospitality recession in the history of mankind. So ironically, when I bought this duplex, I'm like, I got to be out by March 1st of 2020. That's when peak season starts, right? So of course we got 2 weeks of peak season and then the entire world shut down. So that month, March of 2020, should have been the very first month that my management company managed $100,000 in bookings. We did $767 on a single reservation. And that was hosting rescue workers that were in town, doing something related to COVID. So, went from here's some success. Maybe we finally made it, to literally zero for a period of time. Fortunately, again, I still have my corporate job. I didn't quit until December of 2021. And so, I'd been burning the candle at both ends for the better part of the last decade prior to that. And fortunately, I hadn't spent any of that money. And so that kind of helped out as well too, had a cushion, made it through COVID, and have continued to reinvest. In fact, so that same duplex is now listed for sale. That when that closes, that will be the very first time that I've actually taken money off the table. I've just continually reinvested in the businesses and what I'm doing. And this will be the very first time that I actually sit on cash for a little while. I kind of am curious to see what happens here. Obviously things have gotten very interesting with the economy and the markets, with interest rates doubling in the last year and all that fun stuff. So I don't think it's a bad thing to sit on cash at this point. And so, I have a young family. My wife and I just got married in October, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to sit on cash for a little while. So this will be the first time that I've done that.
All right. So as we're watching it, as we're recording this is March 15th, 2023. I think that yesterday or the day before, 2 banks went bankrupt. I mean, they went out. My wife just said yesterday, so I think like our interest loan on our house is like 3.75 or something like that. She says some interest rates are going up to 6-7%. So now talking about real estate, but also talking about, because I was talking to a gentleman earlier, Jerry, and he talked about how the recession of 2008 changed a lot, and people had to either reinvent and reimagine their business, or they're going to go out of business. So now what we're going through right now, how does a person go about reinventing and reimagining their business at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to make any drastic decisions. I haven't seen any significant impact to my businesses so far, but I think you have to be ready for it, right? I mean, I think opportunities arise when you do have pullbacks or recessions. So, that's part of the reason that I want to sit on some cash for a little bit. And when I say some cash, obviously I didn't spend any money for a significant period of time, but I didn't really have that much. So it wasn't, the amount that I'm extracting from the sale is far more than any cash I've ever sat on. Looking at upwards of $1 million. So, I don't think it hurts to have that dry powder here and just kind of see how things play out. But yeah, I think you have to be ready to pivot. I mean, at least I feel like I've proven to myself that I can make it through something like COVID, where you go, from a certain level to zero business for a little while. Regardless of what happens, I don't think it'll be zero business, right? So if we made it through that, then that's kind of a good stress test in terms of hospitality. Even if you have a 20-30% pullback, it's not going to be 100% for a sustained period of time. But you have to pay attention to that, right? I mean, you've got to look at, for instance, like rates, what we charge guests, that may change, right? So then how do you make up for that? Do I have higher occupancy to go with those lower rates and then hope that my revenue evens out? Those types of things. I've got a staff now. I mean, I have almost 10 employees. So, I have people's livelihoods I've got to look out for. That's always number one when you look at something like this. And then just don't do anything stupid, right? Like don't do anything, don't throw a hand grenade. Don't have any bright ideas unless you feel like you have to, and you have to have a Hail Mary because you have an existential threat in your business. I don't think there's any reason to blow it up.
All right. So now last night, because I knew we were going to be talking today, my friend Gary Vaynerchuk, we all know Gary V, just he spoke in front of 2,000 realtors last week, and it went live, I think, last night. And he was talking about, social media. It's not going anywhere. Print is going down the shitter. And he's talking about that even if you're a real estate agent, if you're in a real estate business, you need to be on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my damage. TikTok. He says, because that's where the eyeballs are going.
Right.
And, even 3 years ago, who would have ever thought, when you say, back TikTok used to be Musical.ly, but, thinking, no, I had Jerry on. He's like, he had a video yesterday go viral, 300,000 views, him working out. And he's 54 years old. So, I hear a lot of people, I don't want to go on TikTok. I don't want to dance. I'm like, that's not what it is anymore. That's not what it is. A lot of people don't realize that. They have, their mindset is not on that, on growing. And there's a reason why KFC, Kia are spending half their budgets on TikTok.
Yeah.
no 15-year-old is buying a Kia.
Right. Exactly.
So talk
Exactly.
to us a little bit about changing your mindset and also going out to where the people are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Gary Vee fan. I watched a lot of his stuff early on, especially for the people that are trying to make that first leap of figuring out entrepreneurship and what works. He's got a lot of great content, but yeah, I think I mean, you've got to figure out where the eyeballs are and go to them. So in my business and short-term rentals and hospitality, the big thing now is owning the customer relationship, right? So what going into COVID, more than 95% of our business was on Airbnb. Frankly, Airbnb didn't treat their host very well during that whole pandemic. It didn't matter what we had to say. It didn't matter what your cancellation policy was. Everything was just forgiven, right? So any revenue that you might have gotten all just went to zero. And so I think there's been you see the hashtag Airbnb bust now in social media. I think there's been a lot of pushback. And so hosts are trying to own that relationship now and have more direct bookings, booking through our individual website. We're doing things to, collect guest information and send out offers and coupons and things like that to have people book direct with us. So that was 2019. We were at greater than 95%. Here we are 3 years later. I just checked this morning. It's 44%, right? And 34% is direct bookings. Then you've got some home away mixed in there. So, it's a very different environment now. I think it's not just having those eyeballs, but owning that relationship. So, I think it's dependent on the industry, right? For how you do that. Instagram is huge and in as far as social media and hospitality, easiest way to kind of showcase a property. But yeah, I mean, you've got to do all of those things now. I mean, Gary Vee is one of the original pioneers for social media, going back to his dad's wine library company and posting on YouTube, when they got bought out by Google early. And, back in those days, I mean, they literally called him in like, hey, why are you even using it? Like, what's working, and he's been fortunate to ride that wave for the last 20 years. So, I mean, he's totally right. I mean, you gotta not only get the eyeballs, but figure out how to capitalize on them for sure.
And that's something I wanted to hit on because, my friend Russell Brunson wrote the trilogy series of his books on traffic secrets, expert secrets. And he talks about how so many businesses do not build their email list. They don't build, an email list because what happens one day, Mark Zuckerberg says, you know what, guys, we're done, and then shuts Facebook down. If all your business is done on Facebook and you don't have their email addresses and you don't have your list built up, you're setting yourself up for failure. So talk to us about building your email list, because you actually own that list, where if you're on Facebook, even StreamYard, we don't own it. We're only renting it. Right. So talk about building up your list because you own it.
Yeah, that's something that we spent a lot of time on and money on in the last year, 18 months or so. I mean, and exactly kind of what I was saying before with Airbnb, you wouldn't get an email address. You get some Airbnb email address that's tied to the reservation, right? So even on the primary host. So unless you went back and asked that, our primary guest, I should say, so the person that actually makes the reservation. And so, you can go back and ask for that. If there's 16 people in the party, maybe you're lucky that you get the single person that made the reservation. And so kind of, one of the tactics that we use, there's a company called StayFi actually invested in their last round. But they have equipment that hooks into the Wi-Fi, and similar to if you were to go to Starbucks and log into their Wi-Fi, and it, asks for your email address and asks you to click, and then you don't need a password, you just log in. Same exact thing, right? And so then instead of getting maybe one email for a 16 guest reservation, now all 16 people that log into the Wi-Fi, because let's be honest, everybody logs into Wi-Fi, you're able to do that follow-up. And so in 2 years exactly of collecting just the primary guests information, we collected 1,800 emails. In the first four or 5 months of this other strategy, it was 2,000 emails, right? So you're just able to scale it that much faster. The second bed and breakfast that we closed on in December, the guy actually had a email list of 18,000 former guests. And there's, not just owning the relationship, but being able to offer, let's say there is a recession, being able to offer a discount going out to those folks and maintaining that relationship, recognizing when times are hard, but still getting support from the people that have supported your business over the years. Let's be honest, people love to support local business and small business. And so, anything you can do to develop those relationships and keep them going and make them stronger so that people are loyal and come back to you. I'm all for that.
All right. So I have my friend Steve Sims on, the Wizard of Oz. We all know him. He makes things happen for billionaires. And he talks about, anytime, whatever business he gets involved with, he always under promises, but over delivers. And I've had friends that had BNBs, and I said, what makes a successful BNB to a not successful BNB? He's like, well, what we do is we find out, do you guys have a special occasion coming up? Is there a wedding? And he'll actually, if they find out it's their birthday, he'll actually buy a dozen roses, put candy on the bed. He'll go that extra step. So when people see something like that, they're automatically going to share it on social, and it's going to get more eyeballs. So talk a little bit about, under promising, but over delivering on whatever business you're in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's huge in hospitality, but to your point, I mean, it's big in any business, right? I mean, let's be honest, expectation management of yourself and others is probably one of the most important skills you can learn in life. And when you have people coming in, it's all expectation management, right? So in all of the communications, the pictures, the descriptions, all of these things, you're setting a level of expectation prior to arrival. If you don't meet or exceed that, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And so there's a lot of little things that we do along the way to try to make sure that we set that up for success. And frankly, it's interesting, we used kind of like overly professional video or photos initially, and we're much more toned down on that now. I think, you look at your typical real estate listing for a property that's for sale, it's just this like pristine, beautiful thing. You walk into the house and you're like, wait a minute, is this the same house? That may work in sales, but I don't think that it necessarily works for Airbnb, right? So, you walk into a place, you've got this looks exactly like the pictures. You don't want to walk in and be disappointed. The moment that happens, then people start looking for other things that don't meet their expectations, and it just becomes a downward spiral. So, it's constant expectation management for sure.
All right. So something that I noticed, and I started doing it, ever since I started the podcast, I'm very cognizant of people that leave reviews, what people say, positive or negative. But I noticed that there's a lot of companies, even on Google, they've been in business 20 years and they got 3 reviews. I'm saying it's because, like, I know that once we hang up, I'm going to ask you to leave a review on our podcast, whether it's good or bad, but at least leave a review and let the guests know what they're going to get. But most businesses, 75 to 80% of businesses, do not ask for reviews. And now, even if I'm going out to a pizza place, I'll look it up on Google and I'll check the reviews. So talk to us a little bit about that, especially in the hospitality business, how important reviews are.
I think hospitality is probably the number one industry where people look at reviews, right? I mean, you mentioned restaurants. You're going to look at it as well when you go to a hotel. My wife and I went to go visit my little sister in El Paso, Texas. And as we're going through looking at hotels, this one's only a whatever, looking at the ratings. So people definitely look at them. I think it's what's interesting about short-term rentals and kind of the vacation rental industry is that to me, the review system is what keeps people honest. So investors have to reinvest in these properties. Otherwise, the ratings deteriorate over time, which means your revenue deteriorates because you can't charge the same rates, right? So you have to continually reinvest in these properties. And so that the asset class as an investor is different, I think, than your norm. You can't just have like a college rental, for instance, where you're just constantly extracting value. You don't necessarily have to reinvest and upgrade, bathrooms and kitchens and things like that. You've got to do that in this asset class to really maximize your return on investment. As far as ratings, all of these platforms have their own way that they go about it. You've got 2 weeks on Airbnb after your stay to leave a review. VRBO's a year. So, it just kind of changes the strategy a little bit. But to your point, you need to go back and ask people to leave that review. We're all busy. Life happens. Not exactly high on somebody's list necessarily to leave a review, especially if it was a good stay, right? You have a terrible stay. You're going to tell 10 times more people about that statistically than you are a good experience. So, those people that had a 1-star experience, they're going to write about it all day, every day. So it's really convincing the people that had a great time to go online and write about it. And we do that on Google as well. So I actually checked our Airbnb profile prior to this call. We've got like 2,047 Airbnb reviews. So it's I'm a data guy, so it's always something that I'm watching. And yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to me when I see somebody who's been in business for like 10 or 20 years and they've got 0, 1 review, something like that on Google. It's so easy to set that stuff up and automate it now. It's always interesting to me to see that.
And, for the last couple of minutes, I want to talk about, because you've mentioned it a few times, when I lost my vision a couple of years ago, I lost 80% of my vision, but my hearing got much better, not according to my wife, but, you've said the word relationships 6 times so far. So I'm counting, I don't know why, but ADD, I guess. But a lot of, because I was with GNC, like I said, for 30 years, and a lot of people came back because of the relationship we built and then what we did after the sale was done. And I think a lot of people, yeah, it's great, I'm going to collect all these emails, but then they just spam the shit out of them and they just click that unsubscribe because they're not building that relationship for years. And I'm a generational relationship guy. Hopefully when we hang up, we can start building a generational relationship. So talk to us about, especially in the hospitality industry, how important the sale, and even more importantly, after the sale, building those relationships.
Yeah. You talk about Gary Vee. I mean, he's huge on this, right? It's value. You have to provide value to people before you ask something of them, right? And so, if you don't provide value to somebody during their stay, you better not ask them for a review afterwards, because you're probably not going to hear what you want to hear. And then even, to your point after that, right? I mean, it's okay, well, what's going on in the city for the next month or the next quarter? Concerts, events, restaurant openings, all the festivals, parades, all of those types of things. Just letting people know, just free information, take it or leave it. You can delete it if you want. If you happen to look at this, here's a discount code so you can book with us, but otherwise just letting people know what's going on with the city. I think what's interesting about hospitality is that what I have found is most hosts, and I can tell you everybody on my staff, takes it very personally that we are inviting people into our city and we get to show them our city, right? And so it's about the entire experience of what they get to see and do while they're here in Charleston, not just where they're staying. We want that to be a good experience as well, but we also want to have a curated experience and help people maximize, whatever it is that they're into, and kind of point them in the right direction. But that all goes back to providing value, right? I mean, it's getting to know, you mentioned relationships, getting to know your customer and building that relationship. You can't add value if you don't know what somebody does value, right? So It's kind of having that conversation a little bit. You've got to have the back and forth to understand somebody a little bit better and make sure you're providing value to them.
Yeah, like say if I come to stay at your place, and the place is okay. It's not. It is what it is. It's it's okay. But I meet you and you're like, bro, you need to go down to this place down the street. They got the most awesome crab cakes. And if I go there and that blows my mind, that brings the whole experience up a level.
Exactly.
But I think a lot of people think, well, I'm the owner, so I can act that way, but they really don't impart that onto their employees, including their housekeeping staff. Like I know we go a place down the shore, and every day when we go in, they do something different with the towels for the kids, and the kids love it. But we take pictures of it and post it on Instagram. And even though the place is not the greatest, it brings up our stay. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I think it's something not only should it be from the owner, but also to the staff, because we're going to see the staff more than we're going to see the owner.
Yeah, it's a lot of little things, right? I mean, I'm a big, little things guy. I mean, those things add up to big things. And that's all it takes is one or two big things before it just ruins your entire stay. Don't get me wrong. But to your point, if your stay is okay and you've got 25 little things that you had throughout your stay that just make it a little bit better, then, it's going to give you a better overall experience. And I think the reality is now in a post-COVID era, people want, more of that bed and breakfast type experience. And they want the hotel amenities, but they want, kind of the B&B, Airbnb price, right? A little bit more cost conscious, but they still want their space. So yeah, I mean, we try to do all of those types of things. I'm a big response time guy. And so early on, I kind of realized that there were two ways to differentiate. One being price, which you never want to differentiate on in business. That's a terrible way to it's a race to the bottom, right? Everything becomes commoditized. Or number two, how quickly do I get back to somebody? And I think what I notice is the reality is most of these people ask 0 to 2 questions. And so they either book instantly, no questions at all, or they have 1 or 2 questions. And the quicker you can answer them, and the quicker that you answer them satisfactorily, the faster someone books. And so, so last year we did $3.1 million in gross booking volume. We maintain a 30-minute standard. So we check that every single week. Anybody that responds to guests gets measured. And, we want to keep that under an average of 30 minutes response time. So, I think there's little things you can do like that. It's not necessarily that people want a problem solved immediately, but they want you to recognize the problem immediately, right? Depending on the problem, of course. If the house is on fire, then that's a whole different story. But they want you to recognize the problem immediately and be communicative to develop a solution. And then to your point, the details. I mean, details matter. So few people execute on details now. The worst thing you want is somebody, to be like a Comcast where you call, right? Oh, I've got one question, but I got to hit 17 buttons before I hit a human being. It's just, it makes for a terrible experience. So I think there's so many little things you can do, like you said. And if you ever come to Charleston, you got to stay at our renovated bed and breakfast. We'll put you up.
Well, when I come down, we're definitely going to hit lunch, go out for dinner. You're going to show me a great hot spot. Because I love lobster bisque. So if you can find a good lobster bisque, we're good.
I got you, brother. Let's do it.
All right. So now like I said, this is a teaching podcast. So for the last minute or two, if you're a brand new business owner starting a business March 15th, 2003, what would be your top 3 piece of advice for a brand new business owner?
Oof, wow. That's, and especially going into economic uncertainty. If you have a W-2 and you're getting ready to quit and you've got a family too, I hope you have some level of certainty, that your idea is going to stick. I think it's making sure that you have something to sell for sure. That making sure that you have something to sell comes long before you have a team that can handle the things that you might not necessarily want to do. But yeah, and I think thinking about culture is important early. It's never too early to think about that as you start adding team members. it just becomes more and more important. Making a wrong hiring decision can sink your company completely if you do it too early. But yeah, I think, knowing who you're selling to, making sure that there's a market, and are you good at it? Otherwise, probably reconsider going into a recession.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So now where do we find you? How can we support your mission? Do you have a website that we can go to that I can put in the show links? How do we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've got it in my, under my the lower corner of the picture here, but my website's just my name, joshhatter.com. People can actually go on and schedule time on my calendar from there. I do have a small mastermind group that I am constantly, looking at possible folks to add. It's called Revolutionary Mindset. And, there's no cost at the time. So it's really simply a matter of, if you are that person that you think you're ready to be an entrepreneur and you've got a bunch of questions, and, you want some fellow entrepreneurs to be able to kind of guide through that process. We're just trying to create a community of positivity and accountability, most importantly. So feel free to reach out, always looking to have conversations and love to meet new people.
I love it, Josh. Thank you so much. And guys, if you guys want episodes like this delivered right to your email, we have a newsletter called the Thursday Thunder, where every week you'll get episodes like this delivered to your inbox. So you're getting mastermind level talks for free. We're not charging anything. So you're actually learning from gentlemen like this, millionaires, billionaires, successful business owners. And all you got to do is sign up. So Thursday Thunder, and I'll send you guys the link. Josh, brother, I want to say thank you. I'm so grateful that we finally got together. I know we were playing email tag for a while, but we finally got together, and I just want to say thank you. I can't wait to come down to Charleston and hang out. Please
do, man. Invitation stands. Come and we'll show you a good time, and probably make you want to move here. So,
all right, brother, and go Gamecocks. I got to run, guys. I love you. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. Have an amazing week, guys. Josh, have an awesome week, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.